Hello, teammates, and welcome to the Goal Diggers, a program where we discuss stories of leadership and motivation with sports serving as a metaphor dedicated to daily grinders, corporate athletes, and go getters. My name is Vince Velasco. I'll be your host for this special second episode of the Goal Diggers Sports Events Essential series, When the pandemic hit, one of the most affected industries is the sports and fitness industry. But despite that, some have managed to push on with adherence on the IFTF guidelines. This goes to show that sports is not at a standstill and still holds value during these times. Whether you have plans on organizing sports events during this time or preparing for when the pandemic ends, this is a great time to learn more about how you can organize a more impactful sports event. Now, in line with its thrust to providing training and support to the sports community, the Gold Diggers are providing a series of free Facebook Live sessions that aim to provide practical sports marketing and events management advice from the experience of some of the country's top sports professionals in the series entitled Sports Events Essentials. So for today and last week, we discussed sports events essentials right here on the Gold Diggers Facebook page. Now, in April, the team also intends to launch a more in depth sports management course with the goal of helping develop more sports leaders and impactful sports events. The topics will cover sports marketing, events management, project management, medical best practices, sports law, digital marketing, and finally, crisis management. But of course, I wouldn't be able to do this without the help of our resident gold digger team, as well, of course, as our new recruits, Robbie, Abbie, and Attorney Inang. So let's introduce them one by one, shall we? So first up, she is Senior Manager, Run Rio Events Incorporated. 8 years of outstanding project achievements from concept to execution, especially in the running industry. Crisis Manager of big races such as Run United and Condra Marathon. Project Head of Milo Marathon, National Geographic Earth Day Run, Bakdo Stripes Run, Condra Marathon, PSC Bull Run, and an entrepreneur mom. Let's welcome Abbie Aranda. Hi, Abbie.
Thanks, Vince. Hi, Vince. Hello, everyone. Good morning. I feel so honored to be here. But first, I would like to congratulate Gold Diggers team for their efforts to inspire and motivate people. That was so exemplary, especially during these unprecedented times. Your featured conversation with sports personalities truly inspires us, organizers like us, to get back in the action with this new normal.
Thanks, Abbie, for joining us. It's really good to have you again. Honestly, such a heartwarming speech. Let's move up to our next teammate over here. She grew up playing competitive volleyball from grade school all the way to the UAAP, but found herself in the sports of athletics later on. Partner Romulo Mabanta Buenaventura Sayok and De Los Angeles law offices, where her practices focus on litigation, family law, immigration, and labor law. Legal consultant, Run Rio Events Incorporated, and a member of the Board of Trustees of the National Masters and Seniors Athletic Association of the Philippines. Let's welcome Attorney Victorina Calma, otherwise known as Attorney Inang or Inang. Hi, Inang.
Hi. Good morning to everybody. How do you beat like a welcome speech like Abbie's, no? But I'm really happy to be here. I'm really honored that Robbie has reached out to me and asked me to share in the passion that we have together, which is sports, and really the metaphor to life. Because in my personal life, in the way I live my life and the way I want to continue living my life, I believe everything that I learned from sports and everything I grew up with is something that I can use and apply all the way until maybe till the day I die. So it is relevant, will always be relevant, and I'm happy to share this platform with you guys.
We're honestly honored to have you, and it's very true, like we mentioned last week as well. Sports really does play a very big role in everyone's lives. That's why we're all here as well today. So, last but not the least, he is Chief Sports Advocate of Exemplar, the organization that banners the Gold Diggers PH. Formerly Youth Ready to Drink category brand manager in Nestle Philippines, former Milo Sports marketing head, former national athlete, UAAP football champion. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Robbie De Vera. Hey, Robbie.
Morning, Vince. Thanks so much for doing this again with us and the Gold Diggers. And so happy to have Abbie and Attorney Inang on board with the program. I'm super stoked because we can learn so much from the both of them. I've worked with them with Vince as well for maybe over 5 years already. And truly, it's been an amazing experience, an amazing run with these people. So take out a pen and paper and then look forward to the conversation because I'm sure you're going to be able to pick up a thing or two about handling your own sports event. So back to you, Vince.
Thanks so much, Robbie. So this is the second episode. Now, before we jump into everything else, Robbie, let's remind our audience on why the Gold Diggers has this initiative.
Thanks, Vince. So it's been a full year into the pandemic already, and we're still not close to any grassroots or amateur sports events being allowed, and rightfully so. But as mentioned, we won't allow this pandemic to stop us from pushing the sports agenda forward. So, in line with its thrust in providing training and support to the sports community, these sports events essentials episodes really encourages our sports community, our sports leaders, maybe facilitators, athletic directors, or sports organizers, to use this time that we have right now to upskill and learn, and hopefully raise our capability to run better and more impactful sports events in the new normal. So, as Vince mentioned earlier, we believe that sports will surely make a comeback. And by the time that it comes, we hope that the sports community is ready. So, true to our commitment to help uplift and grassroots Philippine sports, we're trying to encourage the rest of the sports community to use their energy and time now to prepare for that eventuality.
Well said, Robbie. And quite honestly, I don't know how I follow up anything after that because it's very passionate speech. But let's get to know, of course, and touch base our new recruits today, our new teammates. So, of course, we touched base with you last week. I'd like to start first, of course, with Abbie and Attorney Inang. Can you tell us more about how you began your sports events management journey and how you got involved rather with sports events? So I'm going to start first with Abbie. Abbie, take it away.
All right. Um, my sports journey began it was the year 2011 when me and my husband got addicted on running fun runs every Sunday. And then I got curious on the people behind Run Rio. So I applied and then I got in. And luckily, the Philippine Tour event was offered to me. They didn't mention that it was the Milo Marathon. And the rest is history. That's all.
So it's safe to say you are still part of sports events all the way until now. And I think honestly, the same thing can be said for Inang, who is, if I remember correctly, a podium finisher for Run Rio events, correct?
I've had my share of good results. My journey into the sports event management really is because of my profession. So Abbie and I are both connected with Run Rio. So our common person really there is Rio de la Cruz, the founder and really the mind behind Run Rio. So because of my legal profession, Rio has asked me to come on board and help him with his races. And on that, giving my insight, my legal insight, taken from my knowledge and my experience in the legal background, the legal field. That's how I incorporated myself in the sports management, now sports events management.
But going back to what you said, it still continues throughout your life. And no matter what you did professionally, sports still plays, of course, a very big role here. Now, I want to move on to our next question, which is what is it about sports events that you like? I want to start first with Abbie.
What I like about sports event is that you had these opportunities to learn from the finest mentors like Coach Rio, my former colleagues, and of course the best sports executives of big brands. And also witnessing on how real champions evolved from running to 10K category to dominating the 42K full marathon and to being an Olympian. That's the best part.
And honestly, Abbie, we've done these events together for the last how many years? You really see it in their faces, how they respond, how they sometimes they even cry coming off the podium.
Yeah.
It's not just because of them making the podium, it's the years of hard work, like you mentioned, that made it all the way there. What about you, Inang? What is it about sports events that you like?
Let me just jump off from what Abbie said earlier. She did say that in her experience, she's seen everything. So it's really beautiful. I mean, the word is really beautiful to see the athletes evolve. And for me, I love sports. I grew up with sports. I'm still doing competitive sports to this day. So what is it that I like about sports event? It's the sport, the learnings that I'm able to acquire in the process, the learnings I'm still able to apply. So because it's my background, it's because it's my way of thinking, it's my mindset. That's what I love about it.
It really does play a very big role in our lives, no matter what we do. We really can't escape sports. Now, I want to bring back Robbie here. So, of course, we're going to have the three of you. Now, this might be a bit of a difficult question because you've both attended, all three of you rather, have attended very, very, very vast sporting events. So, what are your most memorable sporting events? Maybe give us one or two. Let's start with Abbie.
There's a lot of memorable sports events, but there's one that stands out. It's when I assisted the two athletes, the Milo Marathon King and Queen, when they participated in Boston Marathon. That's the time when they resume after the Boston bombing. There's a lot of learnings and full of emotions. That's the most memorable sports event for me.
I honestly don't know how you personally top that in the future, but I'm glad you shared that experience with us. What about you, Inang?
Don't hate me. I can't answer this question.
Mm.
For me, because I enjoy it. I love it. It's my passion. So I don't go, I can't pinpoint to one specific event. I'm just happy to be in an event. Each event, I mean, each running event, no matter how many times I run it, at the gun start, I'm like dying of nervousness. I want to cry, I want to pee, I want to go back. It's so each experience, each event is always a new event. And it's really because I love it so much, I'm happy to just be there. So it's really quite hard. It's all about the experience. So each experience is a memorable experience and it impacts your life always one way or another.
I think that will be the quote of the day. It's all about the experience. It's all about the experience. I think we're going to be jumping back to that later on in the episode. Now, Robbie, what about you? They've mentioned a series of events. What are your favorites or favorite?
So I was able to answer this question last week, but what I would say this time around is that what I like about sports events is really working with super good professionals like everyone here on the panel because we've had terrible days. Abby, remember we've had really easy days, right? So it's beyond the sporting experience and what we can make, the contribution we can make to like the participants and the spectators of the event. It's also working with professionals like you guys that really makes it special because we're working on our passions and really making a contribution with the effort, right? And I'm envious of Abby because Abby was able to travel with the with Mary Joy and with uh, the marathon kings that we had in like the LA marathon, the Paris marathon, right? So it's super solid experience, Abby. I'm so happy for you there. In my case, it's also taking kids to like the for me what is a mecca of sport for me. So when we took kids to FC Barcelona back in 2017 and 2018, it was a super solid experience because not only were the kids fans of the team, even I was a fan of the team, and we got to see the likes of Lionel Messi, Luis Suarez, right up front, right there next to the field because we were sitting field side, as I mentioned, I think last week. So yeah, those experiences put a cap into like your efforts because it came from like a grassroots football event in the Philippines, and then you take it to the global stage, right at the home of FC Barcelona. So those are some of the most memorable experiences I've had.
Two things before we jump on to the meat of the matter. First of all, Robbie, I don't know how you keep your composure and stay professional when you meet, when you meet people like that. Because honestly, the fanboy inside me would be jumping up and down. And to your point about professionalism and working with the utmost of professionals that don't panic, if I may share just quickly, we had this one event, I believe it was maybe 3 or 4 years ago, where it rained right before the cheer dance competition. And you all had contingency plans already laid out. It made my job such an easy job for the day. So again, it is really important and it's such a memorable experience working with such consummate professionals. Now, like I said earlier, let's jump onto the meat of the matter. First of all, Robbie, we did tackle a bit of this last week, but what else would one need to know in starting or putting together a sports event?
Right. So thanks, Vince. So if you recall last week, for the sake of our audience, we discussed the importance of strategy when it comes to like coming up with a sports plan, a sports event, right? So this time around, I'd like to discuss the importance of crafting a communication strategy. So once your strategy is already in place, the implementation comes next, right? And that's where communication comes into play because the role of communication is critical to convey your organization's objectives, build relationships with your audience, and the most importantly, compel them to action. So communication lends itself internally through alignment purposes, let's say internal communications. Externally, there's a lot of manifestations, right? You can have marketing efforts and in compelling your audience to take action. You have relationship building through public relations. And at the worst case, you even have crisis management, right? So normally in a communication strategy, it consists of several components. First off, it's basically it's the message. So what is that message that you want to communicate to your audience? When building your communication strategy, you need to take a look at your organization's goals across a period of time. Let's say in a time span as short as a month or maybe half a year or maybe a full year. And then within the time span, figure out what needs to be communicated to achieve that objective. So just to bring it home to our experience here, if you're organizing a running event like a marathon, and you have a certain number of participants in mind, so to hit that objective, knowing what to communicate and when will allow you to achieve those objectives. So in which case, if the message is about inviting runners to the event, you'd like to ensure that there's enough lead time to get the message disseminated out there to as many people as possible. So much so that there's enough time for recruitment, right? And also to accommodate the registration process because it does take time, especially for large-scale events. And more importantly, enough time for the athletes to train. So it would be unwise to invite runners to a marathon only a month prior to the event because it limits the number of people who can actually compete and join in the race because there's not enough time to train, and there's a certain number of weeks that you need in order to fully prepare for a marathon. Beyond that, so beyond the message, an important aspect as well is the format of the message. So is the message simple enough to be in writing? Is it complicated and does it require a visual? So are you trying to get an emotional response? So maybe a video will help you out to do that job. And a good example in our experience is how race organizers put out race maps and race programs or flash race routes and race reminders on screen. Also use it to inform runners on the race route and on other safety and emergency protocols. So it's much easier for participants to understand what to expect and what needs to be done through a visual format as opposed to, let's say, a written document, which will tune your audience out. So knowing what makes the most sense on how your message will be delivered to your audience will help get that message across. So secondly, and most importantly, you need to, just like what I said last week, you need to understand your target audience, right? So who are you talking to? So in our case, if we're talking to runners can be broken down into so many subgroups, right? So, and these subgroups are all based on different things like demographics, location, behaviors, and so much more. You can cut that runner's profile so many ways, right? So understanding their needs will help define how you communicate with them, and that differs from one subgroup to another. So an elite runner, badly put, will be motivated differently from a casual runner. And you have to think about just what you want to say and what you know about the audience group you're speaking to, and adjust the language and format of the communication to suit their needs. So elite runners may be interested in the race route, the timing systems, and the incentives, or like the medals, right? Or the experience of the start and finish line, right? So what is that going to be like? So that's what they're interested in, which is more of like the technical aspect of the race. While the casual runners may be more interested in the experience as a whole. Maybe the event area, what's available in the activity area, like the concession stands, the side activities alongside the event. So it's more about the less technical, but the more experiential aspect of the event. So while the core message will be to invite runners to the event, the skew to the elite runners will be different from the casual runners. So at the end of it, it's really important to be thoughtful about your understanding of your audience, because the only way your message will have impact is only if you are relevant to them and you also speak their language.
So basically, it's also knowing the importance of the message, which I completely agree with, and knowing the audience and the heart of the communication strategy. So we've answered, who, what, and how. What about the where? How does social media play a big part in today's communication in sports events, Robbie?
Great question. So especially now more than ever, digital platforms are really the most pervasive. channels of communication because of this pandemic, right? So this is what everyone is on right now, and this is the best way at this point in time to get your message across to your target audience. So it's really important to be thoughtful about understanding your audience, as mentioned, because the only way your message will have impact if you not only say to them the way your audience speaks, but putting it in places where your audience are or spend their most time in will most help magnify that. So that speaks about the third component of the communication strategy, which is the channel. And the channel is basically where you should communicate. So the channels where you should communicate, in order for you to communicate effectively, you have to go where they are as opposed to expecting them to go to you, right? So think about where they go, where they get and go to for information. So for the older demographic, maybe let's say they may be more on Facebook as opposed to Instagram. And then for a younger demographic or younger audience, they may be more on Instagram or on TikTok, right? So it's easier to go to them there on those platforms rather than asking them to go to a website like your website, right? Which is more clicks away. So some good examples I've seen so far in the pandemic is the use of in-platform registration for virtual sports events. So one way that we've managed to have our son participate in sports events in this pandemic is through virtual sports clinics. So now from posts either on Facebook or Instagram, you can now register by clicking on that post and filling in your details from there, as opposed to linking them away to another external site, or as opposed to drawing attention to your website. So it's all about making the process as painless as possible for your audience. The easier for them to see and understand you, the easier for you to convince them to take action, which is to register. So beyond the channel, we also have the importance of the cadence or the frequency of your awareness efforts, right? So how often do you plan to communicate to your audience in a given time period? So planning this frequency or cadence into your strategy will help you get your message heard and hopefully retained by your target audience. So in my experience, in order to get your audience to remember something, usually the practice is to repeat that same message to your audience around maybe 3 to 5 times, and you can also do it in different ways. You can use different channels to convey the same message, maybe in different formats to improve your chances that your message gets heard and remembered. And to contextualize that in how Philippines has done that, so a good example is the Southeast Asian Games, right? So the Southeast Asian Games, they used event-centric messaging, and it was implemented across various formats, ranging from social media to traditional media and even on out of home. So they were all conveying the same message in different phases. So early on in the start of the Southeast Asian Games, it was all about communicating the theme of Win as One, and we saw that on digital, we saw that on out of home. And then eventually when the event came closer, it was all about supporting the event, supporting the national team. And then closer to the event, it was asking Filipinos to join in the festivities, right? So, and these were all done in various channels, and it was very pervasive because you would see the different marketing collaterals from where you are, like on your phone, all the way to the event venue. And when you get to the event venue, there's even more messaging coming from there. So it's like an integration of all of those components. So that's the relevance of having the frequency. So you improve how your message gets retained and heard, right? And lastly, and most importantly, for the previous steps, this is something that we are already doing as organizers, right? But the last step is most often missed, which is the measurement and refinement of the messaging. So we need to be able to find a way how to measure those messages and how they're resonating to your target audience, and then refine the components of that strategy right away when you find out they're not working, right? So if you refine it better, then it improves your opportunity to get the message across and for you to get your desired results. So just to reiterate on those components, so we have the message, the target audience, the channel, the cadence, and then measurement and refinement. So those 5 components will allow you to put together a good communication strategy much faster And it simply increases your chances of conveying your message and compelling your target audience to take action, hitting the objectives that you have set out to achieve.
Now, Robbie, for the next question, you actually touched on it a little bit in the second question I asked you, which is how can we tell if we've successfully conveyed our message and objective? Now, before you answer, I do want to give one personal example, which is Milo. I memorized the entire theme song. I memorized the mantras and everything because of how you relayed the message. But go ahead, please do answer it for us, Robbie.
Yeah, so like when, especially in events, right? So there's a constant repetition of the brand messaging, which helps, right? Helps it cut through the noise and then helps you absorb and retain that message. So, great question on how to tell if we've successfully conveyed the message, right? So, for large organizations, so in my previous work experience, we have the benefit of asking the help of analytics teams, right? They can be internal or externally sourced, and they can help check on the message recall one way or another if the message was successfully conveyed. Now, so normally it also involves maybe get hopping into a focus group discussion with the audience, right? So those are some of the ways to check. But maybe for leaner operations, maybe for smaller sports organizations like schools or like LGUs, or if you have a team, like if you're the captain of your basketball team or the coach of your team, right? So definitely you can still use that despite being a lean operation. So it's just a matter of building a call to action in all of your communications. So make sure that there's always whenever we communicate, there should be a reason, right? So maybe it's to impart information, or maybe you're asking them to do something. So what are you asking them to do, and why should they do it? So your communication strategy should be based on your audience and exactly what you want them to do. So when asking your audience to take action, you need to understand very clearly what's in it for them or others that they care about, right? So would you, in our experience, would you like them to know more about the race, the race details? Would you like them to register? Would you like them to save the date? Or would you like them to donate to a cause, to the advocacy that the race is associated with, right? So make sure to build purpose into your communication strategy. And be clear about the purpose and the mission of your organization so that you can convey it in an authentic way that others can connect to. So what will inspire your audience in the current moment that you're communicating in? So having actionable messages is a clear way as part of your communication to allow to see if your message is resonating to your audience and for you to refine it in case you need to hit your objectives.
So basically, you have to really pay attention to all the details as well. It's not just the overall message, but the audience, how you communicate, what platform you're using, taking into account who's managing this platform, who's drawn to this and that. I hope everybody took out their pen and paper because, well, if you haven't, then we can, of course, you can watch the replay later on after you watch it for the first time. Now, let's call on some of our new teammates. So first of all, I'd like to call on Abbie. So Abbie, we've worked together on many events. And I know that your role as a senior event manager as well as a crisis manager is very critical to ensure the success of larger events that we were a part of. I mean, we mentioned some of them before, Run Rio, National Geographic. I mean, these were all large scale events. Now, speaking of these large scale events, size definitely brings with it some challenges with regards to safety. And in our experience, we have a whole cross-functional team working with us, including a designated medical director. What would you say for this two-part question, rather, what would you say the role and value of having a medical director is in sports events? And what are the points that a medical director has to consider during such events?
Thank you, Vince. For a medical director, um, their role is vital during all phases of emergency response in an event, with key roles on giving directions on mass casualty triage, on-scene treatment, communication, coordination of patient transport, and patient tracking. And for the points that a medical director has to consider during the event is to create a sound risk management plan, identify the hazards, who might be harmed and how, evaluate the risk and decide on precautions, record your findings and implement them.
I want to jump off something you mentioned, which are hazards. With any type of event, with any scenario, there are risks that can be a factor there that you have to consider. So how should sports organizers go about preparing for these sports events with regard to risks?
sports organizers should create an emergency plan. Um, they should identify stakeholders, local and third-party agencies that will be involved, create procedures and protocols to response, develop procedures for coordinating critical event response across multiple locations, discuss your plans for the venue management as well, and seek input on the preparedness plan from all the stakeholders, including law enforcement, hospital, public health, and local government units, and of course, venue management as well.
Now, for this next question, Abbie, you and I have been a part of such large scale events. We've also been a part of the smaller events. We've seen runners go from 42 kilometers all the way to being from being first time runners as well. We've seen kids run. We've seen massive waves of people coming in and out for events. So, how can a sports organizer ensure medical and safety preparedness from an organizer standpoint during such events?
To ensure medical and safety preparedness, sports organizers should monitor and track everything. They should establish an incident command center for coordination of response and streamline communications. Remember, communications is the key. Prepare all forms to be used, including medical log sheets and forms for insurance purposes. And of course, monitor risk throughout the event by creating a checklist and having a nominated individual responsible for checking at regular intervals.
I think it's safe to say, Abbie, based on my experience and everybody's experience here working with you, you are the go-to in this field. And also, you definitely do not panic under pressure, which is something that somebody needs in the field that you work in. So thank you very much, Abbie. Now, of course, to our newest teammate, Inang, I want to go to you. It's very exciting to have you here because we don't really get a lot of legal people to talk about their side of involvement in the sports events world. So what would you say is the role and value of having a legal consultant such as yourself with regards to sports events?
And I will say you will not get anything legal from me. You know, this is what I want to communicate. Whether you are a lawyer, whether you are a professional, or whether you are a doctor, each one is still a human being. Each one is a companion to another. Each one is a teammate. I listened to the discussion. I worked with Abbie for so long, and you're so right. She is the go-to girl. She is the first person on your call list when you need anything in a sports event. I listened to Rob, and he's talking about paying attention to details. Abbie is also talking about communication, planning, identifying risk. You look at that, all of that, what do you see? You see a team where, and I correlate that. So this is a working team, a team that will build and organize an event. You can also look at it like a sports team. My history is a volleyball team. So you have a team, you have members in that team, diba? So each member has a role to play. For the team to work, each member has to communicate. Each member has to pay attention to the details. You have to keep your eyes open, you have to stay alert, and you have to identify your weak spot, which is the risk. Diba? And you have to prepare. So, I like to listen to that and I correlate it to life and sports, and it's the same thing. It's absolutely the same thing. So, what is the role of a lawyer? The role of a lawyer is the same as a medical director like Abbie. It's a team member. It's a team player. It's somebody who supports the idea of the sports event. Diba? It's not about us. It's not about I'm smarter than you. I have the more important idea. It's me as a person with a different kind of perspective, a different kind of experience, diba? A different kind of skill set. And I bring that into this sports events management. So what is our role is to support the idea, to make sure that it will happen, to create the roadmap, to navigate it with to mitigate the risk, no? To make sure that the risks are to the minimum, absolute minimum. And that risk is not only about a medical risk, it can be other things No, it can be a contract risk. It can be a relationship risk. So that is our role, to support the idea, to give our input with our different set of skill set. So it's important that we're in there as we prepare, as we organize, as we set up, as we begin the process. I'm not saying that you should always have a lawyer. It's just always just having someone to give you that guidance in a different perspective. And for me, it's a legal perspective, because my ideas, my experience in the legal profession is different from Abbie maybe in the medical, So Abbie can completely do a different set of, things, something I cannot do. In the same way that I can do a different set of things that Abbie cannot do, diba? So it's really supporting each other. What is our role is to support. What is our value is to give our insight and to help it see the result that everyone hopes to achieve. That's it.
So I have to respond with two things. First of all, I can understand now, meeting you for the first time here, why you are a lawyer. Number one. No, number two. I think you can add a motivational speaker to to your resume, because I can hear the sports background coming through whenever you talk.
Let me just talk about this. My vivid memories and my best experience in life, and from which I always draw from, are the hardest moments in my sports career. In my sports career, I remember vividly, with such, clearness in my mind. I was elementary, maybe, no, high school, and I was upset. I was volleyball to, no? So I was completely upset. I was so consumed that we were losing. I think I was team captain at the time. So it's nagwawala. The term, di ba? Pag you're na team, nagwawala. My spikes were going everywhere. I couldn't control anything. And I was so consumed by my frustration. And my vivid memory and my best memory, which I think helped me, is my coach sitting me down, scolding me, crying, di ba? You better get a grip. And that's what life is about, di ba? It's like having those really tough moments and getting a grip. Like Abbie also, we have those medical risks. When it happens, my God, your world can collapse, diba? Your entire event will befall on that one singular moment in time when that one runner hurts himself, diba? It's not about the 50,000 that ran and were happy and finished. It's about that one person who died or who had serious injuries, diba? But you compose yourself, you focus, diba? You get your job done, you make sure it's done. So, my value again is just to give that legal insight so that when Abbie gets to that task, when the event is set up, we have a ironclad, we call it in contracts, an ironclad contract, so that whenever it is hit, wherever it is hit, we are ready. So like in sports, you have a sports plan, diba? So you're going to hit it here, you're going to hit it there, you do your defense well, so that obviously the goal is to win.
Just another perfect example of, we're going to say this countless times throughout the entire episode, or throughout how many episodes, that sports really does carry over to other parts of your life. And you did mention, of course, possible injuries, things to consider, and keeping your composure, which are all things you have to do when you're a legal counselor, when you have to be involved in these practices and sporting events. Now, with regards to that, what are the legal consequences in relation to sports events? What do sports events organizers need to consider here?
There are so many risks. Anything, no? Anything for that matter. It doesn't relate to the sports event. But because this is our topic, again, I bring it back to the idea of a team. Diba? It's about the people who make the team happen. It's about the team itself and anybody affected by the team, right? So what is it? You're talking about the people behind the event. Abbie, Robbie, when he was a director. So it's all these people who are giving you your water in the water stations. It's all those people who are guarding your pathway so that you can run smoothly along like the length of Buendia and the length of Ross Boulevard. It's about all those people who supply your bananas, your medals, your t-shirt. It's about the sponsors who make it happen, who give you the money to make it happen. It's about the team that makes it happen at this very moment. And it's about the runners. And it's about, anybody that can get hit. Because we have incidents that, of course, there are strangers that run into our race line. Diba? That happens because, they're drunk or they're not paying attention and they run out. So those are third parties. So what are the risks? Plenty. So if you look at the suppliers, it can be about you have a dispute with your sponsor. You have a sponsor who doesn't like the layout of something. It can be about your supplier who's not delivering on time. It's about the runners and what they want. Whether it's about protecting yourself against any incident that will happen during the event, like the medical incidents. It can be disgruntled runners after the event. You know, it can be not getting paid, it's about getting paid too much. So there's so many facets, there's so many areas. And of course, there's that, everybody's ready, but it's raining so hard. I don't know if Robbie, that was your time when we had to call off Milo in Luneta because it was raining super, super hard. Everybody's dead in the starting line, but it's, flying debris, flying like that. And so we had to call it off. And what's the legal consequence of that, diba? Because the cost, there's always a cost, diba? The cost of resetting, redoing everything. So, think of something like that. Everything has a consequence. And so our job is to help identify what those other consequences are, So Abbie kasi is focus on the medical, no? The physical, the medical. So we have to think of other things. So when we look at the contract, we have to tell the organizer, you have to make sure you're able to deliver this. Are you able to deliver this? Because if you don't deliver this, they can sue you. Diba? In the same way, if you don't pay, are you sure you're able to pay your employees? Everybody who's giving you their 12-hour work job during that day to make it happen. Because if you don't, diba, we have to watch out for that. Diba? What happens if you're not able to, if you have to cancel because force majeure, there's a big storm or there's a war, diba? Are we able to address that? What happens if what happens with their contracts with their suppliers, our ambulances, what happens with our partnership with the hospitals and things like that. So, those are little things, everything. We have to make sure that we all have all that detail. So when we read the contract, it's every time, every line. So crazy, diba? And then it gets back and forth, you read it again because you miss out on all the details. Somebody did talk about it. See Robbie, pay attention to the details. And that's our job. We pay attention to the details, but with the legal mindset at play. Robbie is paying attention to the details, but in the communication aspect, our details is in the legal consequence, what can happen, what will be the problem. So that's that.
One of the first thoughts I had hearing you speak from a personal standpoint is, I hope at some point I can afford you for anything that might happen that might happen to me.
If you're nice to me, we can just,
Okay, good to know. Thank you for the intro, Robbie, Relly, and Simone. And now I have another great legal friend. But I do also like how you keep bringing it back whenever you start a conversation to the team aspect. All things to consider. With regards to that, for my next question, how do sports event organizers address those risks? Because you said the whole team comes together, but as sports events organizers, you have to be able to give them the proper advice from a legal standpoint as well on how to address all the risks you mentioned. How do they address those risks?
Well, documenting. Abbie talked about it. You have to detail and you have to document. So that's our job. The lawyer's job is to document. Our profession, it always falls back on the evidence. So, when you're in court, whether if I do a criminal case, you go check, do I have enough evidence to make sure that I accomplish my goal? The same here, no? So how do you address those risks? How do you make sure you're protected from those risks? You document. You create the right documentation for each and every situation so that you can be prepared. Again, preparedness is the key, which is like, I like to talk about, it's like preparing for competition, you train. So here, your training is preparing for the situation. So we document, we create contracts, we create waivers, we create acknowledgement receipts and document all sorts of documentation, and we make sure it's part of the file. Because Abbie and I, Robbie and I, we've talked about, we go back and forth on documents, because at the end of the day, when you start fighting about the details, you go back to what is your backbone, and that is your contract. And your contract and your backbone will make sure that you will stand tall. Diba? You will be resilient and you will succeed and you will accomplish your goal. So how do you address your risk is to make sure that your backbone is ready and strong and fully supported by the right things. So that for us, for a lawyer, that's making sure that you have the right documentation in place. And of course, we have this worst case scenario situation always playing in our head. So that's how we're able to prepare for that. So that's how we address those risks, making sure that your backbone, which in the world of lawyers is documentation, making the right contracts. Yeah.
Documentation, right? So from now on, everybody for sure who's watching and listening is putting that down in bold capital letters, that they document everything from their events, which actually is a perfect jumping off point for me, because we have some questions that we got from those who are watching us who sent this in. So I don't want to hog all the questions. So first of all, we're going to start with you, Inang, before you jump off to Robbie and Abbie. How do we make sure, what you mentioned earlier, because you mentioned court earlier, how do we make sure that waivers hold up in court?
So that would be my job, right? So I have to make sure it holds up in court. So I have to make sure for the run reorganization or for the sports event that I'm supporting or giving advice to is that I have to word it correctly. I have to word it properly, because of course, there will always be legal requirements. We have rules in law, we have rules in the court procedures. So I have to make sure that when I start crafting those documents, it will hold up in court. So I have to make sure it will hold up in court. So if you do your job right, if you're the person who's giving you the legal assistance right, then it will hold up in court. You know what I mean? I'll give you an example lang ha. In general, there's a contract they call contract of adhesion. Okay? That kind of contract is a contract that you sign because you have no choice. So their example for that may be like an insurance contract, or, it's usually an insurance contract when you really have no choice but to sign it, or else you won't be able to get what you need, diba? So, we have to make sure that a waiver is not just signed because they don't understand. They just want to make sure I sign in the race. I want to participate now. This. We have to make sure that what we say there is very accurate. It's very understandable. Diba? And then so that when it comes to justifying it, making sure it holds up in court, then it is not shut down as having any flaw. So it will hold up in court if I do my job right.
And quite clearly, it seems like you do your job right, because I think at some point or another, everybody here has hired you on a consistent basis. So...
I have to do my job right, otherwise I cannot appear in your show again.
Duly noted. Now, talking about events, I want to go back to Robbie over here. Now, this question is something that I feel personally attached to as well, so I'd love to hear your answer. Is there a necessity for such large-scale sports events? These events have, of course, environmental and safety implications. Is there such a necessity for these events?
Yeah, thanks, Vince. Good question. So I think going back to consumer centricity, I believe mass participation events were conceived because there's a market for it, right? They address the needs and wants of the consumer, as I mentioned. So for the spectators and for the participants alike, they're after something, and it may be for the pleasure of the experience, right, or ticking off a bucket list, right? So they have many reasons, each valid to the consumer, right? So, or the guest in the event. So stadium packed basketball or volleyball games or marathons, all these events, they address those consumer needs in many ways, right? So in our experience in the marathon, there's data showing that the event bringing numerous benefits on physical, emotional, social aspects to its participants. And the thing though is doing them now might be a different story, right? So because of this pandemic. So as I've mentioned it before in our previous episodes, um, the time now is for us to play the long game. So let's use the values that we learned in sports, the patience, the discipline, to wait it out. Because we may be a year in, but the light at the end of the tunnel might be close, and that's why we're doing this program to equip everyone, sports organizers most especially, so that when the time to execute sports events comes in, then we're ready and we're doing it the best way we can with the proper protocols, medical, legal, that we can put in place right now in the planning process. As I mentioned last week, remember, let's think things through, and then when the time comes, let's follow through. With regard to safety implications, I've worked with the likes of Abbie and Atty here, and other sports events organizers in trying to deliver world-class standards. And that includes like a mountain of work, you know that, Abbie, right? So to ensure the event is safe as possible for the participants and the spectators. And the reality is there's no such thing as a perfect event. So we have to ensure though that every execution is up to par with our very, very high standards. And the way we've done things in the past, in some situations, we can say that it's even better than global standard. With regard to the impact on the environment, though, particularly on waste, so we're proud to have worked with the likes of Milo and Nestle Philippines, who are doing their part in ensuring that sustainable solutions are explored when it comes to events, right? So, very happy because Nestle Philippines has a journey toward a waste-free future. That's how they call it. And the last Milo Marathon leg in Manila was waste neutral, where we collected all the paper and plastic from the event, and they were turned over to a partner for co-processing. So these were either used in the kilns to fire up the cement factories or turned into eco bricks from those cement factories, right? So it's using it's trying to make sure that the waste that we bring out is also collected and then disposed of properly or put to good use.
Oh, well put, Robbie, honestly. And I think you do have a spontaneous question over here from Inang. Go ahead.
No, it's not a question. I just want to go jump off on something that Robbie said. Adaptability is a key. And when we used to start races in the past, my goodness, this is my age showing. But when we started in the past, there were no issues like waste. Really, it wasn't an issue that people were throwing their cups where and when. But as we evolved, as time went through the bus, as people became aware of more different things, then we started to adjust. We started to adapt. So Milo, for example, now it became important to take cognizance, to realize how to address those issues as it evolved from the start. So, environmental and adaptability, those are things that have evolved during time.
No, it's honestly well put because awareness brings also implications of what you should do, what you should know, how you should go about events. And speaking of events and implications, I want to move on to Abbie over here because we know, of course, talking earlier about the importance of having medical directors, medical staff, and the importance of having the right number of people for large scale events. Now, what's the ratio for the number of medical staff around to the number of people in the event? Which should be the right ratio?
For that, for 1,000 participants, we should have at least 10 medical staff. But sa Run Rio, Coach Rio is very particular with that element. Normally, nag-OC siya pagdating sa deployment of medical staff. Yeah.
So you really have to have a specific number of medical staff on hand for each number of events. So Abbie, could you kindly repeat that for me one more time, just for the people out there who probably might have not caught it? For what number did you mention? How many should be available?
For 1,000 participants, there should be at least 10 medical staff deployed on site.
10 medical staff, everybody. 10. Now, Robbie, I think you want to
Yeah.
add to that?
Yeah, thanks, Abby. So I think the message also is your support should be commensurate to the size of the event. So that's the rule of thumb there. So badly put, if you have like a basketball event or like a team practice, so you only have like, let's say, 20 participants in a court doing drills, right? Or maybe playing in a tournament, in a small format tournament. So always try to make sure that you cover um, the commensurate amount of support for the ones who are participating in the event. Of course, that grows as the event grows. So with Abby, her mention of the 10 per 1,000 ratio, that's something that we used in the past. Definitely you can augment that, but that's also aligned with global standards because of how the event is put together, right? So it's a straightforward event. It's just running from one end to another. So that's where that that careful decision making on how much support you will give comes in. It will change if you have a contact sport, badly put, like a football event, right? So your requirements also change because there's now physical contact. Players can really tackle each other. So the requirements will change. So as how we put it, make sure you know the event properly and know the risks, as Attorney and Abby has mentioned. And then from those risks, then you make a decision on how much support that you will give. Our message is the way we should conduct sports events. Always make sure that there's support and don't limit your support to the event participants because the spectators are actually in your realm your scope of control, right? So you have to be mindful also of the spectators. You might be putting them in a little risk also, so consider that as well in your event planning.
So absolutely all details. We keep going back to that. The size of the event, the location, a number of people, the staff, the equipment, basically all of these things. You have to, the time of the day, anything that could happen, you have to take all of these things into consideration. And Attorney wants to add one more thing,
And all those details brought about by one thing: communication. Communication is the key. If you're able to de-escalate the information, then all these details that you've planned so well and you planned so hard for is going to be execute itself flawlessly.
Speaking of communication, you've all really given a lot of key insights based off of your respective backgrounds. Now, I want to jump off to a certain point that a lot of students actually love, which is the bullet points and the summaries of everything you guys mentioned. Now, I know we just talked about details, but if you could summarize each of you, I want to start first with Robbie, Abbie, and then Inang. What are the essentials of setting up sports events coming from your own experience? Robbie, let's start with you.
Thanks, Vince. So from my end, it's you have to put together a well thought through communication strategy, and that's by focusing on your audience, being inclusive and collaborative in the process, and compelling your audience to take action.
Abbie?
All right. From my end, create a sound risk management plan by identifying and evaluating the risk, creating a medical and safety plan, and monitoring and tracking everything.
And Inang?
And from me, from a legal standpoint, is to provide sound legal advice by one, supporting the plan, so, which is the event, and then you identify other risks with the mindset that you are trained with and the experience that you have in the legal field. And then you document everything. Because when you document everything, then you do not miss out on the details and you're able to go back to all the things that you've worked on, you've created throughout the process of organizing your event.
And speaking of documentation, I hope everybody who's watching this, I hope you documented everything. All right. So there you have it. The Gold Diggers' top 3 tips on how to set up sports events. My summary for it would be create a well thought through communication strategy, create a sound risk management plan, and secure sound legal advice to support that plan. Now, we're going to move on to something a little more fun and lighthearted. Robbie, I'll excuse you from one of our favorite segments on the show. It is called Crunch Time. So Robbie gets a pass here. I'll be asking a series of questions to Inang and Abbie, and you have to answer right on the spot. No ifs, no buts, just answer maybe a line or two. This is going to be really fun. I'd like to request both of you to have your mics on. They will be sports related questions and non-related sports
And
questions.
I will
Now,
stop you quickly. It's like
yes.
it's like in court when you have a witness, you're in cross-examination, and you ask them the questions, and you say, "No, you just answer yes or no. No, 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 yes or no."
Yes.
That's now for me. Okay, not happy to be here. Okay, go.
Okay, yeah, cross-examination, but badly put, I'm probably not going to be as good as anybody you've ever encountered in court, so you have nothing to worry about. All right, so here we go. I want to start off with a bit of a juicy one, and you can't point the questions at me. I will throw Robbie under the bus here because he put these questions together. Rio de la Cruz or Andrew Neri? Abbie.
Abbie and I will answer Rio de la Cruz. He is the love of our life. Andrew may be
Okay.
taller, but Rio is the love of our life.
And Andrew, Coach Rio, you know I love you both. Okay, favorite winning moment in sports, Abbie, and then Inang.
Hirap
Favorite
na.
winning moment in sports.
I don't have a memorable memory nga eh. Ano pa, winning
It
moment.
doesn't have to be you. It could be somebody else that you witnessed.
Oh, okay. You know, I totally am in love with Eliud Kipchoge. And I will, I live by many of his quotes. He is the world record holder in the marathon. So my moment for him is when 2019, he broke the 2-hour marathon record. Unofficially though,
Wow.
he was the first man who was able to run the distance of 42 kilometers in a time of 1 hour, 59 minutes, and maybe 40 seconds, something like that. But that is an
Wow.
absolute winning moment for me.
I have to go back to see that. I don't think I caught that moment. But Abbie, what about you?
Can I go back to the first question?
Go. Go, Abbie. Go for it. Go back.
Are there
Again,
any
for those
options?
watching, Rio de la Cruz or Andrew Neri?
Robbie de Vera.
Ayun.
Oh, there we go.
The best safe non-answer. Thank you, Abbie.
And
Come back on this show next week.
I honestly love how Inang answered for you. And I saw how your face complexion changed. But let's go down to your second question, Abbie. Favorite winning moment in sports?
Okay. Favorite winning moment is when Mary Joy Tabal won the Ottawa 21K half marathon because I'm part of it. I witnessed that.
Wow. Inang, go
Yeah.
ahead.
You know, I like to say that, very often the people who work on an event are the least most noticed people, no? You always see the one who wins. You always see the ones that, like maybe like you, Vince, they'll see you, but they don't see the people that do the hard work. And Abbie absolutely does the hard work. And, Abbie has seen absolutely and practically all the winning moments of the Milo Marathon. Each time the runner crosses that finish line, half dead, half, lost, dehydrated with the love of their lives, Abbie sees that. And each moment in time, it always brings that pride in Abbie because, that's it. You see her hard work to fruition. So Abbie's the guy.
Honestly, I want to add to that as well before we move on to our next question. I know this is crunch time, but from my experience as well, I just want to point out to everybody that you guys really are heroes behind the scenes because you don't ask for the attention. You make it about the event, you make it about the people, you make it about their triumphs and their journeys. So to anybody watching who's involved in sports events, if you are in front of the camera, make sure you know who is behind the camera as well. Give them their credit, spend some time with them after the event, sit down and have a meal with them. That's how I became friends with Robbie. That's how I became friends with the rest of the team over here. Yes, Anna?
And that's how you learn.
Yes,
You
true.
absolutely learn by talking to the people.
That's honestly why I love doing stuff like this as well. So I hope everybody is enjoying this part of the segment. And for crunch time, we're going to move on to something a little more fun here. If you had a superpower, what would it be? Abbie first. Let's go. Abbie, what would be your superpower?
I'd like to have an X-ray vision.
I wanna ask why, but since it's crunch time, I'll leave it up to the imagination of other people. Plausible deniability, if ever. Inang, go ahead. What would be your superpower?
Me, I'd like to stop time.
Wow.
Like a freeze moment in time, and I'm the only one who can do something. Yeah, like
Mm. Okay, now here, this is going to be a bit of a tough one because for me personally, I always have a hard time putting this on a list. I want to start first with Inang this time. Favorite sports film?
sports film.
Mm-mm.
My goodness. Ooh, nothing comes top to mind. But again, I'm a sports person. And regardless of whatever the story is, I always gravitate towards the sports movies. Why? Because I always love that moment in time that you see the story develop from training, from the hardship, and then the rise. The success. I mean, that's always a moment in time that gives you chills ba? Alam mo yon, parang talagang dalang-dala ka ng pelikula. Kasi, as an athlete and somebody who loves sports, I can relate to that. I can relate to somebody giving in the hard work, in that point of despair that they want to quit. And in that moment of victory that you were able to accomplish what you wanted to accomplish. I maybe Chariots of Fire I just watched not so long ago. It's so old. It's so old, but I'll watch it because I want to see that whole evolution of the training to the rise, diba? And that's sports life for you. And that's life. So I can't, maybe say which one.
I'm officially calling it. I'm putting every time I introduce you, I will introduce motivational speaker as part of your resume as well. Ano?
Chariots of Fire, pangit.
Hindi naman, hindi naman. What about you, Abby? Favorite sports film?
I'm not into sports film, but I'm not sure if this is sports film, but I like the Boston Marathon bombing. It gives me chills because I was there after that.
Yeah, because you have a very special connection to it as well. Now, for
Yeah.
those of you who want more options as well, I'll give some of my personal takes. I like Rudy. Rudy's a really good one. And a very underrated one is Draft Day. Kevin Costner and Chadwick Boseman there. So very underrated. You guys should watch. Go ahead, Inang.
Yeah, I just saw on TV. I'm on cable. Don't judge me. I don't do Netflix, no. But I saw Trouble with the Curve. I've never seen that movie, but I saw it. It's about Clint Eastwood and Amy Adams, and they're talking about drafting a baseball player. And
Mm.
so they're talking about sports, and this guy who's pitching. Parang, okay, I like it, and I'll watch it for that particular segment only.
Yeah, you can look that up on YouTube for those particular segments as well. Another one I know I'd like to add would be, of course, The Rookie and Robbie's favorite, The Replacements, which is out also right now on Netflix. So basically, I want to end this part with something a little more on the motivational side, which is your motto in life. Now, Abby, let's start with you.
You can start with me.
Okay, Inang, go ahead. Abby thinks it through.
You know, I'm a believer of hard work. Again, no, this is something that I've learned because as early as 9 years old, I was doing sports already. This is a quote that I read somewhere, and please look it up because I cannot give proper credit to the one who said it. I know he's a basketball player, but he said, "Good, better, best. Never let it rest until your good becomes better and your better becomes best." I love that, diba? So what does it teach you? It teaches you to work. It teaches you to work hard and to never give up. So it rolls off your mouth so easily, diba? It's like a kid's rhyme. But please look that up. Give it credit to the proper person. No? I think he's an NBA player.
Maybe MJ or somebody along those fields. Might be.
I can Google it.
Yeah, okay, go ahead. Abby, you're up. You're up rather.
Yeah. My motto is simple: do the thing that scares you. I always apply that on all of my events, um, because I always retain that first time jitters every time I organize an event. Yeah, and that fear turns into excitement every time.
Ang ganda.
That honestly inspires me. So I just want to add from Jim Carrey as well. You can fail at doing what you don't want, so you might as well take a chance doing what you love. And with that, I want to end this part with your final messages. So I want to start first with Abbie. Abbie, final messages here for everybody watching.
Thanks for having me. To Gold Diggers team, please continue to empower people to realize their full potential. I can't wait for you to launch your sports management course. More power, Gold Diggers. Keep digging in.
Thank you, Abbie. What about you, Inang?
I have a completely take on final message, but this is something I want your listeners, your audience to take away maybe. Again, I fangirl over Eliud Kipchoge. No? I have a quote that I think for our topic today might be relevant. And Eliud says, I believe in a philosophy that says, to win is actually not important. To be successful is not even important. How to plan and prepare is critical and crucial. When you plan very well, then your success can come your way. So, in relation to our topic today, you know, it's about having everything into place, in place. And there are so many aspects, so many details of a sports event, and it's not easy, and there's so much work to be done. But if you plan it well, you do your job well, then you will be successful, you know? So that's that. And then a lot of people, and I was thinking about this last night. No, I'm sorry if I'm going to take up your time, but I was thinking about it last night. And I'm like, maybe your audience are not sports people, diba? Maybe you have somebody who's listening and says, I don't understand this. I'm not an athlete. Diba? I didn't play in a varsity team. I'm not in a sports team. I'm not in a sports, diba? I'm just a regular student, a regular girl, diba? But I just happen to watch the show because Vince is so cute and Vince is cuter and really is like so, charming. Diba? But I like to just out to them and tell them everything about your life is about being in a team. You don't realize it, but it is. Your family is a team. Mommy, daddy, brother, and sister. That's a team. Diba? It will work. It will be solid if you play like a team. Diba? And you have the values of a team, which is you communicate, you cooperate, you do your job, and then you plan. Diba? Some people don't have perfect families. You go to school, you have a set of friends. If it's not your set of friends, you go to work. You have a set of office mates. So somewhere in your life, there will be a group of people in your life, and that's your team. So whether you are somebody like me, I'm so team from day one, maybe, diba? But if you're not like that, the same values, regardless of where you are in your life, regardless of whether you're a sports guy or not a sports guy, I'm a techie guy or whatever, it's that same value, and you always will use that forever throughout your life. So that's it. So that's my final message, I guess, It's about planning, working, all the values of discipline, hard work, resilience, fortitude, and it will bring you through life's journeys and success. And
now, before we move on to Robbie, Inang, whenever I need a pep talk, I am calling you. I'm calling you. All joking aside, honestly, I loved what you just said. Robbie, take us home.
That was super passionate, Torrance, and super. This whole episode was super fun, guys. Super thank you, Vince, Abbie, and Inang for lending us your time, your talents, sharing your energy, and most especially your passion. Right? We're all doing this to help uplift and progress Philippine sports. So maraming salamat. And to our audience, you're rightfully so, Torrance. Maybe we want to reach out to broader than the sports community, right? So it's really about communicating to our daily grinders out there how sports can really add value to your life. So to our audience out there, please like and follow the Gold Diggers on Facebook and on YouTube for more inspiring stories like this and for learning sessions as well to hopefully help uncover your potential. And as Abbie has mentioned, lastly, if you'd like to join our exclusive and more in-depth sports events management course happening in April. Please follow our Facebook page for more details on how you can register for the program. Again, the importance of putting a call to action in your communication, right? So thanks very much again, Vince, Abbie, Inang, for this. This was a really good episode. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
All right, there you have it, teammates. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this special episode on sports events essentials on the Gold Diggers on how to set up sports events. That is our session today. Teammates, remember to dream, dig in, and win. See you next time on our next episode. Bye, everyone.